another distinction. So end of grant KT, which is the traditional, you have findings, what do you do with them? If your findings are being funded by FAC and CIHR, there's an obligation to get the findings out. This is public money, and the public has a right to know what these findings are. The other kind, we have labeled it integrated knowledge translation, but it goes back to that notion of knowledge exchange. So I'll reverse the order here and talk about integrated KT. So it's really about a different way of doing research, and it involves the knowledge users. And the knowledge users can essentially be anyone, the people who would benefit from the findings. Okay, so there's at least 3 ways that the knowledge users need to be involved, helping to shape the research questions, right? So this isn't the traditional approach of, I have a great idea, I need to secure participation from other people, my knowledge users, and I write up the letter saying, here, this is how I'm going to, contribute patient material, and just put it on your letterhead and sign it, and I'll send off the grant. We're not talking about that. We're talking about negotiation, right? The researcher may want to do the study, and they come to the FAC or an administrator saying, here, this is what we want to do. And they might say, that's really great, that's exactly what we need. Or they could say, yeah, we're not so interested in that. We have a different problem that's more pressing for us at the moment. And you need to figure out, it's like a marriage, right? You negotiate how this works, because the researchers have certain needs around publications and promotion and tenure and all of those kinds of things. The knowledge users have different needs. They're making decisions, they're making them now. They can't wait forever. The 2 groups need to be together to interpret the findings and craft the message. Did my own little experiment where it was with a group in rehab, and so the researchers had done the study and were presenting it back to the clinicians. And so it was written for a paper. So there wasn't anything wrong with the research, but it was classic, right? So the objectives, the methods, the conclusions, right, the findings. So the preoccupation was around the 95% confidence interval and not being able to make generalizations because we need another study. And the knowledge users said, but surely you've gone through all this trouble. There's something in here that you could actually tell us that would help us with our decisions, right? We're not fussed that it has to be 95% correct. We're going to make the decision anyway. If it's better than 50%, we're doing pretty good. So help us. So there was this disconnect, the 2 worlds, and this is the theory behind the whole notion of integrated knowledge translation and knowledge exchange is we've got researchers, they have a culture, a mindset, an approach to the world that's very different from knowledge users. So the researchers, it's about precision, it's about rigor, it's about significant statistical significance. It's not about overgeneralizing, right? And so we get the conclusion of we need another study. Like we've found a little bit, but we don't want to generalize. Knowledge users, and the time frame for researchers is usually like forever. So knowledge users, they're making a decision today, right? So they can't wait. They've waited 3 years for the study. They can't wait another 3 years for the renewal, right? They're making decisions. They're okay with taking risks. They're used to doing that. But they need direction and they want it from research. So the notion of integrated KT is by getting them together and breaking down their 2 worlds and getting them to talk to each other, they kind of learn from each other. And then the last way is by moving the results into practice, because the knowledge users said, this is my problem. You've helped me find a solution to it. I'm going to be much more amenable to actually applying it because I've been waiting for the answer. The other ways are helping to decide on methodology, helping with data collection tools, selection of outcome measures. The UK, I think they've actually got it right for randomized control trials. So the researchers, and you don't have to do it with partners, knowledge users, you submit your randomized control trial. You now have to say, what data do you have that patients in the trial or patients who would benefit from whatever it is that you're trialing actually think your outcome measure is the right one? And so there's a growing body of literature in arthritis, which you may or may not be familiar with. So if you, 95% of the trials that are done related to arthritis are drug trials. If you ask people with arthritis, what kind of research do you need? And it's almost something like 90% of them say non-pharmacological interventions, exercise, diet. That's what they really want. So we've got a disconnect at this level that the research isn't actually necessarily what people with arthritis are looking for. Then the second problem is, okay, of the ones, these pharmacological trials, what's the outcome measure? Pain. Of course it's pain. These people are in terrible pain. Do you know what happens when you ask them? Well, what's the important outcome to you? Pain? Yeah, pain's really important, but you know what? I can manage pain. What I can't manage? Mobility. So we have at that level another disconnect because researchers thought they knew what the people with arthritis. And so this is the notion of, well, maybe it wouldn't be bad to actually ask people, have you got their, and you can have both, right? Pain and mobility. And then even at the end of an integrated KT approach, you need to do widespread dissemination. So I talked about diffusion, I talked about dissemination. Application, this taxonomy actually is attributed to Jonathan Lomas 20 years ago probably now. Make it happen. So let it happen, help it happen, make it happen. And so when we think about application, it's like, okay, what can we actually do? Can we identify what the potential barriers are? Can we put the findings in a format that's actually useful? Can we get it to the right people? What strategies do we need to do? And can we actually assess whether we've had that impact or not? And I'd argue that conceptual framework is a useful one. This is one that we've done. The reason why that goes around is at each of these phases, and this is a synthesis of 31 planned action models. This is where people can start to roll their eyes and hyperventilate. It's okay. The outer circle is the application. And so from these 30 models, we synthesize them. And so you start at the bottom here, right? And if you think about it for a minute, it makes more sense. You either start with, I've got a problem, whether it's a clinical problem or a research problem or whatever. How can I solve my problem? Or you start the other way around. You find the solution. And then you have to decide, do I have a problem that this solution addresses? So if it's a clinical one, the results of the trial come out, this is the best way to treat whatever. Am I treating people this way? Well, no. Do the patients I need to be treated this way, right? Or I have a problem, now let me find the trials that actually address the issue so I know how to practice. And then you go through. And so the reason that thing spins around, the knowledge piece, is at each of those phases in the application cycle, there may be primary studies, there may be synthesis, there may be knowledge products and tools.